Let us pray. Almighty and eternal God, creator of all that is, source of all being, center of our unity, provider of our peace, purpose of our life. For all the years of our lives, you have provided everything that has brought us to this day. You have blessed us with people who have brought us into life, who have taught us to live, who have shown us a life that is broader than our own existence. You have shown us our interdependence, and you lead us to the wisdom of living in the truth of the oneness of this world and this universe. On this feast of the coming of your Holy Spirit, open our hearts and our minds and our whole lives to the outpouring of that Spirit. May we continue to learn listening, that we might grow in authentic loving. May this world become consciously the dwelling place of your glory, that in all things you may be glorified. We ask this through Christ our Lord. As Chancellor of St. John's University, in the name of the sponsoring Benedictine community, and in the name of the Board of Regents, I herewith call into session this commencement convocation at the conclusion of our 142nd year of the conferring of academic degrees granted by the university. I request Brother Dietrich Reinhardt, President of the University, to take charge of these exercises.
This is a day of glad and joyful celebration. St. John's University has kept this day each spring since its founding in the days before the Civil War. 125 years ago, in 1874, a commencement guest recorded the air was pure, the foliage fresh and fragrant, the ride by carriage and farm wagon so varied and charming that one thinks it wouldn't matter should it have no end. The day in 1874 began with solemn high mass at 7 o'clock in the morning, followed at 9 o'clock by a play entitled St. Louis in Chains. The play was 5 acts in length. As a contemporary noted, it consumed almost 3 hours in the acting. After intermission for dinner, then there were 5 full orations, as many musical selections by the band, and lastly, late in the afternoon, degrees and awards were conferred. It was a long day. 25 years later, in 1899, the day was every bit as beautiful. The record noted that the entire month of May was one perpetual Arbor Day. The only change to commencement was that the number of events had grown and had to be crammed into a day that moved ahead half an hour. So the solemn high mass for graduates and their families started at 6:30 in the morning in 1899. That last commencement of the 19th century felt momentous. The official account stated, "September will bring in the first class of the new century. For the honor of the dying century, we ask them to equip themselves with iron determination and enthusiastic class spirit, so that the students of the next century, the 20th, will have something to emulate." The charm of a Minnesota spring, the sheer length of the ceremonies, thoughts, however halting, about an uncertain future, these make up a St. John's commencement. 75 years ago, in 1924, as this day approached, a student journalist wondered whether the clumps of hair on the floor of the student barbershop belonged to prospective bishops and abbots, ambassadors and presidents, priests and lawyers, or, more likely, to a seamy crowd of cabaret managers, gamblers, and men of other ignoble pursuits. Perhaps the commencement speaker that year, Bishop Joseph Bush, feared the worst, for the notes of his address sound like a sobriety test. Listen, his themes: keep your feet on the ground, walk perpendicularly, progress forward. 75 years ago. This is a day of celebration. Today, you, the class of 1999, enter a long stream of St. John's graduates who gathered here one last time to celebrate how their lives had been enlarged by what they had learned here, by the teaching and mentoring of the faculty, by the cultivation of friendship and solitude, prayer and service, by the sheer beauty of this place and its power to anchor a whole life's journey. We join together today for a ritual that places us outside time a bit and allows us to behold the values which St. John's University holds dear and which form the minds and character of so many of its graduates. When St. John's University was little more than a name that described 5 students gathered with a couple monastic teachers in a log cabin 12 miles west of here on the shore of the Mississippi River, at that time, the Catholic world first heard the eloquent call of John Henry Newman for liberal arts education in a Catholic context. Then, as now, some feared an education where the claims of religion collided and struggled with law and economics, literature and history, science and the arts. Then, as now, some would argue, even browbeat their contemporaries, that in a Catholic college what is deemed to be true must be prescribed and everything else forced to fit. But 142 years ago, where others feared and fulminated, John Henry Newman claimed with great expansiveness, "I, for my part, wish to stand on good terms with all kinds of knowledge, and have no intention of quarreling with any, and would open my heart to the whole circle of truth, and would tender at least a recognition and hospitality even to those studies which are strangers to me, acting upon a profound insight into the subject matter of knowledge, and by a vigilant repression of aggression and bigotry in any quarter." Catholic liberal arts education. For Newman, truth was attained not by regimentation and intrusive tests of loyalty, but by conversation, momentary collisions, awkward and contrary, between different ways of knowing. Great minds and even lesser minds could take no shortcuts to knowledge, according to John Henry Newman. Instead, they needed to engage seemingly irreconcilable truths and bear for a while with what we feel to be error, because that is how truth comes into view. That is how the very apprehension of God and creation come into view. This ritual of commencement brings before us for a brief moment the habit of mind, the capacity for wonder, the inbreaking of truth, which result from that great amiable conversation between conflicting ideas, which is at the heart of this Catholic and Benedictine liberal arts community. You know, scarcely any of us will actually remember much about this event, let alone what is said. But it will live on to sustain the deepest truths of our lives. And so it is fitting that we enter into the heart of this commencement with the address by a member of the graduating class who has been selected by his classmates. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Michael Dirksen.
I would like to extend my personal welcome to the faculty and staff of these fine universities, the parents and relatives of all the graduates present today, and especially to the monastic community, which has so graciously opened up their home to us for the past 4 years. Due to the support and guidance given to us from all of these people, we are here now to celebrate our graduation from college. I would like to take the time right now to express my most sincere thanks to my parents and all the other parents in attendance for raising us the way you have. I know that my parents are my greatest role models in my life, and I look up to them with all the respect and admiration in the world for the things they have done for me and for the sacrifices they have made to make sure that my life turned out positively. If you have the chance today, after the ceremony is over, take your parents aside and tell them thanks. Thanks for being the reason we are here at this place in our lives right now. I cannot begin to say how much my parents mean to me, but I know a simple thank you goes a long way. Today is one of the greatest days in our young lives, and I am so honored to be speaking to you now. This honor is beyond anything I could have ever imagined. I was moved beyond words upon hearing that I would have this opportunity today, but at the same time, I was embarrassed to be chosen. I cannot regard this as a singular honor because of how talented and diverse our class is. I know for a fact that there could have been any number of perfect students to appear in this capacity today. I stand here as a representative for the class of 1999, and I thank you all dearly for this opportunity. We will soon be walking across this sanctuary to receive our diplomas and officially become graduates of this university. And I am very proud to call myself a member of the class of 1999. I hope you take the time on this busy day to seek a quiet place and reflect for a few minutes on what these past few years have meant to you, how your classmates have affected your life, how living here has changed us from mere teenagers into adults. We were allowed to grow and change here, both mentally and physically. Some of us put on a few pounds, and some of us lost a little hair. But it is the combination of these things that bind us to this community. The measure of a St. John's graduate is not what you come in as, but what you are like when you leave these hallowed halls. I clearly remember sitting on my 1970s couch freshman year and wondering if that smell in Tommy Hall would ever go away. I am glad it hasn't, simply because walking into that building today, all the sights and sounds we experienced come flowing back. I look at my door and see the familiar marks I used to look at every day. Oh, the memories. During the first few weeks of the fall semester our freshman year, my roommate and I both commented that if we won the lottery, we would remain living in the dorms for life. I recanted that statement once I was able to live in Vincent Court, but the feeling of being in this community have stayed with me since then. Nowhere else do such strong bonds form between people than living in the residence halls. To experience life away from home for the first time is a major event in our lives. We all learned a sense of responsibility, for some of us in a harsh manner, that our actions truly did have consequences associated with them. Some of us learned that we should never ride the bus with an upset stomach, or that Tommy too should be patrolled by the authorities on April Fool's Day. But it is in these experiences with our floor mates that have created this wonderful sense of community here. There are little idiosyncrasies about the people living with or around you that might bother you on the surface, but the combination of all of these things truly bring us closer together as a community. To be able to put aside those things that bother you about another is one of the greatest lessons we have all learned here. We entered this place as individuals, but we have successfully become one strongly bonded community. We can thank each other for that. Many of us can see what lies on the road ahead of us, but on this road, there may be some large bumps along with certain twists and turns. As I see it, though, if you proceed to keep on walking back and forth on this road, things will eventually smooth out. This process can prove to be tough at times and can be the cause of stress in our lives, out of the protected environment that we have been fortunate to call home for the past few years. Some of you already have your path set before you. What a wonderful feeling that must be, to be getting married to the person of your dreams, to be attending a top-notch professional school, or to have signed the contract for your first real job. The road ahead must be smooth. But I caution you to beware of bumps and curves. Life tends to throw periods of adversity at us, but any adversity we may face in the future will only help us to grow. Luckily, the base we built here at this university will always be there for us to fall back on. Then, there's a group of us who has no idea of what tomorrow morning holds. Besides a slight headache and a dry mouth. At this point in our lives, we are offered another chance to wipe the slate clean and start again, knowing now the real person that lies within us. Our college education has prepared us to seek that which is passionate for us. What a wonderful time in our lives to begin something new, something that we can fully put ourselves behind, something that may help to change the world. The schools we entered 4 years ago are selective for a reason. They want to produce graduates who have the ability to make a change for the better in the world. Sure, we may have paid a good amount of money to attain this privilege, but I know for a fact that some people sitting out there today truly have this ability, even if you do not realize it yet. I have had the great fortune to grow up in a family with a St. John's graduate, my father. His actions throughout my entire life showed me what a true Johnny should be. A person with great intelligence, unmatched caring and concern for others, a deep passion for life, an unbridled love of our family members, and an ability to have fun. I've had the chance to hear many of his stories from college, and what is interesting is how things change, but how things stay the same. I hear the stories of what he and his friends missed the most, and these are strikingly similar to things that I am going to miss about this place. such as the smell of campus in the springtime, the sight of the bell banner after the first snowfall, walking out to the chapel at 2 a.m., staying up until the wee hours of the morning talking with your roommates about nothing in particular, the pasta bar on Mondays at the refectory, and Taco Tuesday at the Lafayette. Most of all, I'll miss the time we spent here that allowed us a chance to experiment with who we are and what we are searching for in our lives. I beg you to find a company that offers a J-term where you could basically take a month off to search for yourself and your personal mission through watercolor painting. But if you have found one like that, please let me know. If the search to find yourself is shaky at times, if stability in your life seems to be lacking, reminisce about the good times and the bad times we have had here at college. All of us have experienced both. The good times will make you smile and help you feel at home in your present situation. On the other hand, the bad times were meant to teach us lessons and educate us more thoroughly about the world. One of the great things that St. John's and St. Ben's have done is educate our whole person. The lessons we have learned in the classroom will prove to do wonders in our lives out of class. These institutions have generated great people in the past, and the class of 1999 will continue this tradition with pride. Our education here has shown us that we don't necessarily need to follow the chosen path to get to our final destination. Sometimes it's more fun to go the other way and see what that path has in store for us. In my favorite poem, The Road Not Taken, Robert Frost said that 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. St. Benedict offers us all some wisdom about preparing for life out of the college atmosphere. He said in the first line of his rule, "Listen carefully, my son, to the master's instructions, and attend to them with the ear of your heart." If we took the time to attend to daily matters with the ear of our heart, chances are things would be a lot simpler in life. This is the wisdom that I'm going to leave you with today. Listen to things with your heart. Choose to take a path because your heart tells you to, even though it may not be the most traveled one. Choose those things in life that make you truly happy. Upon doing so, complete success in life will be attained. I am confident that all of you will have success in life, whichever path you choose. Take your time and listen to each other. Understanding will be gained from that. I wish you all the best of luck in any endeavors you may follow. Our education here has prepared us for life outside the pine curtain. Let's take the chance right now to see how great we can truly be. Good luck to you all, and God bless.
I'd like to ask Philip Brunel to stand. Born the son of a minister and a self-taught pianist, it is only fitting you would make your life a celebration of God's Word made music. Internationally known conductor, scholar, and performer, for 30 seasons you have directed the Plymouth Music Series of Minnesota, bringing to life the music of composers who are sometimes household names and other times, what's his names? You encourage our appreciation of the great masters whose works you resurrect, and of young composers whom you commission for new works. God has given you many gifts, Philip, not the least of which are a discerning ear for beautiful music, a heartfelt need to preserve and play the well-loved, the obscure, and the complex, and an inquisitive mind that challenges and expands our understanding of the established canon of sacred music. As a Christian of Congregationalist extraction, your musical tastes are decidedly Catholic, from Gregorian chant to gospel spirituals, from Puritan psalmody to pert, from Anglican anthems to Appalachian airs, from jubilous to jazz. For you, every sound under heaven is a gift from the one who made the heavens and a sign of the Spirit of Pentecost speaking to every human heart. Before winning a Grammy or the admiration of your fellow Minnesotans or the respect of the world, you won the heart of your muse, Carolyn, with whom you raised 3 children. For these accomplishments and many others, we recognize you with pride and confer upon you, Philip Brunel, the Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa, on this 23rd day of May, 1999.
As someone whose life has been all about music, I want to say a special word of thanks to St. John's University for the role that music has played in my life, for the role that I know it plays in all of your lives in so many different ways, because of this incredible state and the incredible work that so many people have done to make music such a vital part of our everyday life. 30 years ago, when I was 25, I started the Plymouth Music Series, and I knew that you really need to start things with a bang and get people's attention. So I called up Aaron Copeland, and I said, Mr. Copeland, would you come to Minnesota and conduct your choral music? And Aaron Copeland said to me, yes, young man, I will come. And I said, I know we have to try to figure out a date. He said, it won't matter what date you pick. I'll come any day you say. You're the first person to ever ask me to do this. And one of the lessons I learned when I started inviting people like James Earl Jones and Sir Peter Pears and Dave Brubeck was, you'll never know if you don't ask. You have a 50% chance riding on yes before you even start. And over the years, it has proved me right. And it has been a wonderful part of the whole musical life of the Twin Cities and of Minnesota and beyond. Thank you very much for this. And to you graduates, I would just say that even more than the motto that is on the back of your program, is the fact that the words that precede it in the Bible are the ones that make that motto so important, because it says, the night is departing, the day is approaching, therefore put on the armor of light. Thank you very much.
In a few moments, I'll ask Michael Perry to stand, and he will address us after he receives his honorary degree. But first, I would like to say, in inviting Professor Perry to be with us today, we honor someone who has committed himself to the same work to which we have committed ourselves: the ongoing dialogue between faith and reason, and what it means to live out our faith in the world and in an academic institution in the Catholic and university tradition. Professor Perry's intellectual odyssey gives testimony to one of the most important documents of the Second Vatican Council, the Declaration of Religious Liberty, which asserts, quote, "The search for truth must be carried out by free inquiry with the help of teaching or instruction, communication, and dialogue. It is by these means that people share with each other the truth they have discovered or think they have discovered in such a way that they help one another in the search for truth." End quote. Michael Perry is a scholar who has thought deeply about the subject of the nature of a Catholic college at the end of the second millennium. Just as we, as a university and monastic community, have explored this question over the past 4 years. He brings to the topic knowledge of historic church documents, understanding of both the university and the church, and a love for both institutions. Best of all, he combines with his knowledge of the past profound insights into the future. Michael, will you please stand? You believe that faith is what makes us fully, truly human, and that love is what makes us sacred. You bring this wisdom to bear on laws born of deism and the Enlightenment, and then invite judges and religious leaders, attorneys and philosophers, indeed all citizens, from atheist to devout, into a conversation imbued with the spirit of the Second Vatican Council. You remind us that laws do not exist in a vacuum of personal faiths and shared beliefs, and that religious plurality, not religious neutrality, is America's strength and the First Amendment's intent. You prize the pursuit of wisdom and the search for truth. You encourage religious institutions of higher learning to pursue earnestly the intellectual life. You challenge those institutions to engage in scholarship and teaching that takes seriously the universal presence of grace and truth. You call them to explore the human condition and determine what constitutes the human good, knowing these efforts transform our communities. For striving to introduce moral and religious conversation into law, for eschewing the political apathy of the age and the belief that church and state are mutually exclusive, and for championing the pursuit of wisdom, today St. John's University presents you Michael John Perry, the Doctor of Letters, honoris causa, on this 23rd day of May, 1999.
Abbot Kelly, President Reinhardt, Provost Hendley, members and friends of the St. John's University community, and especially graduates and your families and friends. I am greatly honored by and deeply grateful for the honorary degree you have bestowed on me this afternoon. I am triply blessed. I was born into a family full of Dominicans. I was educated at a great Jesuit university, Georgetown, and now I have an honorary degree from this distinguished Benedictine university. I am also honored by and grateful for the opportunity to speak to you on this wonderful occasion. I've been told that the proper length of a commencement address at St. John's is about 10 minutes, so I shall be brief. 1 week ago today, I attended a special Mass with the older of my 2 children, my 9-year-old son, Daniel. The Mass took place at the Student Center at Wake Forest University, where I now teach. The celebrant of the Mass was Francis Cardinal Arinzi, who the next day would deliver the commencement address at the Wake Forest graduation. I thought to myself, as Cardinal Arinzi celebrated the Mass, how pluralistic Wake Forest, until recently a Baptist university, has become. At Wake, Roman Catholics now outnumber Baptists among the undergraduates. I also thought, as Cardinal Arinzi celebrated the Mass, how pluralistic the Roman Catholic Church has become. Cardinal Arinzi, who is president of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, and who is sometimes mentioned as a possible future pope, is, as perhaps you know, a Nigerian. Perhaps in part because the Catholic Church has become so pluralistic, and not just culturally pluralistic, but theologically pluralistic as well. We Catholics argue among ourselves now much more than we did when I was a boy about what it means to be Catholic. In particular, about what one must believe or accept to be a Catholic, or at least a faithful Catholic. Indeed, we Catholics are now locked in an argument about what a Catholic college or university, like St. John's, must affirm and do if it is to be truly a Catholic college or university. Now, a commencement address is scarcely the place to pursue difficult, controversial questions about what it means or should mean for a person or for an institution of higher learning to be Catholic. In my brief comments this afternoon, I'd like to focus not on anything that divides us Catholics from one another, but on something that unites us. Indeed, something that unites many of us, whether we identify ourselves as Catholic or not. My father, who died in 1976, was not happy with his various jobs over the years. He wanted to be a writer, a novelist, but that was not to be. Having experienced my father's unhappiness, I know how important it can be to a person's happiness that his or her work be a labor of love. And I've never doubted how blessed I am that my work has been a labor of love. My work has been what I would have wanted to do At least it has been one of the things I would have wanted to do, even if I hadn't needed to earn a dime. I urge you graduates to take the time to navigate yourselves into a position, eventually, if not right away, where your work too can be a labor of love. Think about that phrase, a labor of love. Typically, it means something that one loves to do. But I want to suggest a different meaning. Something that is an expression and embodiment of the love that we are called to bestow on one another. For Christians, the basic shape of the good life is indicated by the instruction given by Jesus, according to John's Gospel, at a Passover Seder on the eve of his execution. I give you a new commandment: love one another. You must love one another just as I have loved you. There is no doubt that in context, the one another is radically inclusive. In Matthew's Gospel, Jesus says, "For if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Do not even the tax collectors do as much? And if you save your greetings for your brothers, are you doing anything exceptional? Do not even the Gentiles do as much? You must therefore set no bounds to your love, just as your heavenly Father sets none to his." Recall, too, the parable of the Good Samaritan. But why? Why should we love one another in this radical way, just as Jesus loved us, and in this radically inclusive sense of one another? The heart of the answer, I think, appears in the first letter of John. We are well aware that we have passed over from death to life because we love our brothers. Whoever does not love remains in death. As I have gotten older, I have grown to realize that it is not merely important but essential to one's true happiness. Not that one's work be a labor of love in the first sense, something that one loves to do, but that one's life be a labor of love in the second sense, that one's life embody the love that we are called to bestow on one another. Perhaps our work, however much we enjoy it, will never amount to much. We can live with that. On my deathbed, that will not seem like much of a failure, if a failure at all. But God forbid that one's life should fail to be a labor of love. On one's deathbed, that would seem like, indeed that would be, the ultimate failure. I said that I wanted to focus on something that unites many of us, whether we identify ourselves as Catholic or not. It is this: that nothing is more important to one's true happiness than that one's life be faithful to the commandment to love one another just as I have loved you. And what precisely does such fidelity, such love, consist in? Now that's a question for a life's work, indeed for the work of many lives. But the right answer begins, I think, with the passage from Matthew's Gospel that was my father's favorite New Testament passage. You'll know the passage, the famous Last Judgment passage. I'll quote just a piece of it here. "For I was hungry, and you never gave me food. I was thirsty, and you never gave me anything to drink. I was a stranger, and you never made me welcome. Lacking clothes, and you never clothed me. Sick and in prison, and you never visited me." Then it will be their turn to ask, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, a stranger or lacking clothes, sick or in prison, and did not come to your help?" Then he will answer, "In truth I tell you, insofar as you neglected to do this to one of the least of these, you neglected to do it to me." We gathered here this afternoon in the Minnesota countryside on the last May of the 20th century are in the church of a famous monastery. I was born and raised less than an hour's drive from another famous monastery in Kentucky. My mentor, whom I never met, lived at that monastery. He said somewhere that we must be converted not once, but many times. We must be converted again and again. My mentor was, among other things, a poet. Another poet, this one born and raised in Minnesota, said much the same thing. Or perhaps I should say, he sang much the same thing. His words, "He not busy being born is busy dying." I am not a poet, but let me paraphrase. "He not busy loving is busy dying." Now we've circled back to the first letter of John. Whoever does not love remains in death. Dear graduates, whatever your work in the years to come, and whether or not your work is for you a labor of love, may you always be busy being born. May you always be busy loving. And may you always be blessed abundantly in all that you do. Congratulations.
On this commencement day, we celebrate achievements of teaching and learning. I would like to take this occasion to acknowledge Father Patrick McDarby, who today retires after teaching at St. John's for 43 years. We are grateful for his distinguished teaching as a member of the Department of English. Pat, could you stand? And I also want to thank Father Dale Launderville, the Dean of the School of Theology and Seminary, who in the weeks ahead will complete 10 years of service as Dean. Father Dale has been a wise and energetic steward of graduate theological education at St. John's. We are grateful for his distinguished leadership and look forward to welcoming him back to full-time service in the faculty. Father Dale? And now for the conferral of degrees.
Will the candidates for the degrees of Master of Arts and Master of Divinity please rise? Brother Dietrich, I present the candidates for the degrees of Master of Arts and Master of Divinity which have been approved by the faculty of the university.
By virtue of the authority committed to me, I confer upon you the degrees of Master of Arts and Master of Divinity, which have been approved by the faculty of the university and for which you have been recommended. Father Dale Launderville, Dean of the School of Theology and Seminary, please have the candidates come forward.
The degree of Master of Divinity is conferred upon Joseph Chai from Guangdong, China. The degree of Master of Divinity is conferred upon Joseph Jerry Fetters of the Order of St. Benedict from Collegeville, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Divinity is conferred upon Vernon J. Schmitz from St. Cloud, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Divinity is conferred upon William Leonard Shade from Gainesville, Florida. The degree of Master of Divinity is conferred upon Joseph Quilin Zhang from Wangkang, Henan, China. The degree of Master of Arts in Liturgical Music is conferred upon Youngmi Magdalena Choi of the Order of St. Benedict from Seoul, South Korea. The degree of Master of Arts in Theology with a concentration in spirituality is conferred upon Edward Francis Horsky from St. Cloud, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Arts in Theology with a concentration in monastic studies is conferred upon Anne M. McCarthy of the Order of St. Benedict from Erie, Pennsylvania. The degree of Master of Arts in Liturgical Studies is conferred upon Susainathan Michael from Thiruvayuru, Tamil Nadu, India. The degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry is conferred upon Richard Anthony Olson, Jr. from Minnetonka, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Arts in Theology with a concentration in Church History is conferred upon Gregory Scott Peters from Madison Heights, Virginia. The degree of Master of Arts in Liturgical Studies is conferred upon Christina Elizabeth Ronzio from Kirchener, Ontario, Canada. The degree of Master of Arts in Pastoral Ministry is conferred upon Brett A. Swearingen from St. Cloud, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Arts in Theology with a concentration in Systematics is conferred upon Stephen M. Zalassi from Columbus, Ohio.
Will the candidates for the degrees of Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science please rise? Brother Dietrich, I present the candidates for the degrees of Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science who have been approved by the faculty of the University and the College of St. Benedict.
By virtue of the authority committed to me, I confer upon you the degrees of Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science, which have been approved by the faculty of the University and the College of St. Benedict, and for which you have been recommended. It is customary at this time for Dr. Cheryl Knox to have the candidates come forward, but Dr. Knox is battling with a ferocious case of the flu, and so you don't catch it, she decided to stay home. So instead, I'd like to ask Dr. Clark Henley, the Provost for Academic Affairs, to have the candidates come forward.
Candidates, you may now be seated. The marshals will direct each row to come forward. Will the candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts, summa cum laude, please stand and come forward? Brendan Connor Kelly, all college honors, distinction in political science and peace studies. Jacob Paul Heidelberger. Kyle Mark Bowe. Douglas Charles Covert III. Christopher John Thompson, all college honors, distinction in biology. Saul Aaron McBroom. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts, magna cum laude. Carl Simon Meyer. Christopher John Schaefer. John Joseph Steingraber, all college honors, distinction in English. Christopher Thomas Lysing. Brian James Lloyd. Nicholas Daniel Wirtz. Anthony Clifford Iannazzo. David Salvador Baracus. Christian Allen Peterson. Franklin Peter Bendewald, all college honors, distinction in classics. Tate James Johnson. Eric Richard Zink, distinction in physics and mathematics. James Patrick Cronin. Courtney Robert Severson. Christopher Reed Shimming. Sean Christopher Johnson. Daniel Thomas Simmons. David Matthew Tierney. Mark Sherman Enslin. Eric Thomas Kaufman. Brian Robert Kelly. Jason Matthew Leo. Jacob Walford Hausauer. Andrew Joseph Zimney. Matthew William Bell. Nathan Stafford Sarah. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts cum laude: Abraham Darius Hussein. Christopher Clark Ryan. Aaron John Cronin. Matthew Albert Fort. Heath Garrick Pachuca, All College Honors, Distinction in English and Communication. Chad Allen Klossman. Mo Wa Chow. Jonathan Kenneth Lemure. John Francis Quady. Luke Anthony Schwankel. Charles Ralph Primus. Ryan Dwayne Ratfield. Christopher John Houston. David James Fremo. Matthew Richard Kyle. Shane Michael Kelly. Scott Thomas Johnson. Kevin Matthew Jost. John James Norton III. Gregory Dominic Hartley. Dixon Stephen Cogleen. Kyle David Lingard. Matthew John Bouchard. Jesse Willard Stebbins. Matthew Gerhardt Abelin. Jason John Rowe. Michael R. Kuhn. Mark David Connolly. John McDermott Knipple. Jason Matthew Reese. Brendan Patrick Riley, All College Honors, Distinction in English. Joshua John Hagel. Daniel Douglas Kirsten. Candidate for the degree of Bachelor of Science, magna cum laude, Benjamin Charles Temple. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Science, Samuel John Francois. Peter Bruce Michon. Corey Alfred Sabrowski. Brian Eric Unglob. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts. Stephen Darrell Welly. Charles Christopher Bryson. Jason Michael Bastian, Joseph Hugh Stradig, Zachary Joseph Campbell, Joseph Charles Peterson, Martin Patrick O'Toole, Peter John Masselter, Joseph Michael Efforts, Matthew Mark Cole, Christopher Royce Morissette, Nicholas Coletta Holden, Samuel John Hergott, Sean Joseph McLean, Matthew William Streff, Samuel Stephen Roofer, Christopher Michael Toner, Nathan Lewis Getter, Matthew James Zellen, Michael Joseph White, Christopher James Burby, Lucas Conrad Weigelt, Jeremy Anthony Segali, Joseph Matthew Weiser, Matthew Gordon Jones, James Michael DeLeon, Stephen Andrew Mouse, Jesse Neal Hillary, Mitchell David Johnson, Ross Edward Jones, Michael John Vatka, Michael Patrick Needham, Justin Allen Kelly, Brian Lee Eisenschenk, Jason Joseph Valensky, Francis Daniel McLaughlin, Mark Thomas Slattery, Jason James Nordon, Duncan Ross Shannon, Jesse Mark Stremcha, Patrick James Crow, Andrew John Kinsley, Stephen John Fisher, Chad Michael Drown, Brian David Palkert, Shane Anthony Pemrick, Marlon Orville Quiggle, Jeremiah Joe Flynn, Michael Robert Free, Timothy John Enright, Brian James Nolan, Craig John Grossman, Matthew Thomas Brown, Dugan Thomas Flynn, William Joseph Zacher, Paul Michael Trobeck, Jeffrey Robert Munifering, Michael David Durand, James Antonio Fuchetto, Joseph Warren Stamets, Daniel Patrick McKeon, Eric Matthew LeComte, Thomas Robert Loftus, Paul Christopher Freed, Jamie Edward Zuhl, Mark Darrell Foster, Heath Noble Carter. Quentin James Frank. John Allen Newman. Theodore John Mirren. Ryan Daniel Diebele. Adam Allen Herbst. Chad Darrell Kruger. Jeremy Michael Locke. Joel Raymond Swenson. Robert Eric Danielson. Carl Laszlo Werdak. Scott Andrew Freeler. Carl Paul Hemish. Ross Alexander Coffer. Jeremy Lee List. Eric Thomas Ramatka. Conrad Patrick Ellingsworth. Eric Edmund Masho. Matthew William Rose. Colin Mitchell Robertson. Locke Hu Nguyen. Nathan Anthony Seavey. Jeremy Wayne Pauley. Eric James Ricard. Anthony Michael Fasciato. Charles Philip Mayer. Ken Jerome Leyline. Mark Joseph Rice. Ian George Anderson. Jose Enrique Colon II. Joshua Michael Casey. Randy Allen Broughton. John David Geisler. Jeffrey Brian Turner. Aaron Edward Schenecker. Kevin Joseph Mann. Anthony Charles Stanley Hike. Scott Nicholas Welly. Andrew Merrill Ayers. J. Michael Hancock. Jesse Daniel Hicks. Jeremy Patrick Monteiro. Harry Merlot. Chad Michael Bauer. Kurt Andrew Massey. Jamie Edward Andler. Marcus Brian Tanabe. Stephen Michael Donatel. Jeffrey James Smith. Paul Daniel Lesner. Joseph Peter Crosby. Craig Thomas Arth. Aaron Paul Langsfeert. John Eric Pilney. Christopher Brooks Owens. Anthony R. Giuliani. Brian Thomas Peterson. Douglas James Thompson. Donald James Phillips. Peter Adam Lukes. Brian James Formhalls. Aaron Francis Thiebert. Matthew Craig Erridge. Christopher David Howe. William Joseph Patefield. Chad Michael Reinholtz. Eric Thomas O'Brien. Brian Michael Ramfo. Brian Francis Gurton. Ton van Tron. Ryan David Guggenberger. Brent Allen Rassier. Jeremy Warren Christie. Keith Charles Gallus. Tom Larry Gerards. Brian Dale Burnson. Alan Lewis Sauer. Michael Stephen Frost. Michael Paul Berendis. Daniel Raymond Henricks III. Justin Oakes Robinson. Richard Michael White. Joseph Anthony Collins. Michael Daniel Dirksen. Peter Alfiero Fanucci. Nick Charles Kakos. William Thomas Remick. Joseph Daniel Collins. Brian Joseph Pomerlow. Troy Thomas Barron. Todd Graham Sylvester. Christopher J. Giddings. Kevin John Kuschak. Brent Douglas Merrick. Robert Gregory Anclum. Matthew John Gersh. Joseph Michael Kozrowski. Darwin Stephen DeMonso. Richard Paul Rice. Nathan Foster Gadda. Ryan Donald Brahmanchenko. Sean Michael Alderman. Timothy Charles Smith. Timothy Ryan Bruns. Michael Philip Kennedy. Marcellus Joseph McMullen IV. Lawrence Kirk Johnson. Wayne Michael Greeley. Jason Paul Block. Michael Robert Wimhoff. Peter John Miskovich. Eric Andrew Genrich. Patrick Richard Finn. Christopher John Mosley. David Charles Rust. Kurt Ronald Rothstein. Brett Lauren Jelly. Eric James Nelson. Jonathan Paul Tupy. John Dominic Gerton. Peter Rory O'Gorman. Adam Patrick Kishel. Christopher John Corshane. Jason Patrick Mechtenberg. Joseph Patrick Mechtenberg. Thomas Dale McNellis. Christopher Leo Matthews. Christopher Eric Gigstad. Patrick Garrett Ahern. Zachary Seth Bates. Timothy Joseph Reardon. Tony Aaron Schiefert. Matthew James Schmitz. Matthew John Haynes. Patrick Alexander Thompson. Ryan Patrick Vasky. Mark Leonard Slade. Nathan Dean Jorgensen. Patrick Christian Oden. Paul John Krennick. Michael Andrew Rashavi. Matthew Everett Wiesenen. Samuel Charles Hoxie. Mark Dwayne Janakula. Charles Wayne Karstensen. Troy Clayton Strand. Adam Leo Langer. Matthew Stephen Edelman. Peter James Kramer. Christopher Charles Seifert. Eric Michael Strabla. Dennis Ray Brooks. Eric Richard Stray. John Russell Kirchner. Tad Michael Palmquist. Brian Lee Boyles. Patrick Nilsson Bostrom. Marcus Anthony Severson. Todd Michael Lang. Michael William Seppelt. Eric Paul Hendrickson. Philip Weston Kankey. Rocco Francis Maffei. Grant Benson Nelson. Zachary Michael Haggart. Markham Clark Evans. Justin Daniel Sipple. Travis Ray Geneges. Andrew William Mall. David William Harrison. Alexander Joseph Fisher. Thomas Blaze Soltis. Patrick Joseph Brady. Stephen Randall Kimball. Dwight Ashman Gilbert. Franklin Gregory Winder. Ryan Kurt Williamson. Timothy Onario Providence. John Christian Festi. Patrick Thomas Breen. Thomas Joseph Moes. Brian Joshua Silver. David Paul Christie. Bradley John Messerich. James Dowie Gunn. Eric John Primo. Eric Michael Cosmic. Eric Paulson Wilcox. Eric Allen Tidblom. Patrick Theodore Goodwin. Jeffrey Thomas Becker. Jeremy Robert Segura. Eric Brent Ragaman. Thomas John Sullivan. Thomas Allen Sieben. Joseph Claire Gates. Roland Allen Buller. Stephen John Kilo. David Brian Legg. Scott Allen Bryan. Kevin Robert Nash. Todd Nicholas Tauchek. Brian Patrick Tepler. Edward Walter Ludwig. Peter Michael Klapaki. Todd Keith Hesley. Michael James Caputa. Charles Nicholas Meyer. Jeffrey Donald Tyson. Tony Roy Herbst. Brian James Westerhouse. Patrick Raymond Emerson. Stephen Michael Crow. Matthew Dean Hathaway. Joseph Michael Norwood. Andrew Jeffrey Woobles. Gabriel Allen Ipilani Alisna, Distinction in East Asian Studies and History. Leonard Arthur. Hans Gregory Wyant. Joel Curtis Cargill. John Brendan Anderson. Charles James Persby. Jason Philip Cognetta. Eric Matthew Miller. Casey Lynn Scheidt. Brent Robert Merritt. Charles Edward Reitzel. Spencer Scott Lewin.
And now the senior ensemble, graduating members of the chamber choir and the men's chorus, will sing the Alma Mater and Gaudiamus Igitur in arrangements by Dr. Axel Timer. There are two groups to whom I want to pay tribute at this time. The first are the people who have smiled the deepest and now and again shed a tear these last several hours. The mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers, brothers, sisters, relatives, and beloved friends of today's graduates. Thank you for all that you have done to make this day possible, and most especially for the love and support which you have brought to these graduates at this time of new beginnings. And the second group to thank is assembled in the choir stalls behind this podium. The faculty and staff of St. John's University and their colleagues from the College of St. Benedict. Together, these dedicated educators have labored with keen mind and passions forged over a lifetime to profess the liberal arts education which is the signature achievement of today's graduates. In gratitude, let's all give them a rousing round of applause. We are about to break out of ritual time and close the last commencement of the 20th century. We will re-enter a workaday world where the meaning of what we will have celebrated will have to be discovered and recovered over and over again. There'll be time to say goodbye to one another. Because of the Arctic winds, the reception we normally have outside will be over in the old gym, but I bet lots of folks will take a while to move over there. And so now, before we go, we need a song and a blessing to send us on our way. Please stand.
Almighty and loving God, we live because of your blessing. Today, as we celebrate the achievements of our graduates, our faculty, our staff, our administrators, we ask your continued blessing on all here present and on all who find a home in your heart. Pour out your Spirit upon us, that our whole lives might be lived out in your presence. Help us be mindful of the conclusion of our lives, that we might live now so as to be with you and with one another forever. And may your blessing be upon us all, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.